So I've got this collection of notes in front of me, and honestly, they look completely random. But I think there's a story here, a hidden connection between ancient mysteries and modern science. Let's dig in and see if we can figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, what could these things possibly have in common? On one hand, you've got these epic, mysterious structures built by ancient civilizations. And on the other, you've got this super tiny world of molecules and elements. But you know what? Buried in these notes, there's a thread, a really surprising one that ties them all together.
Okay, so take a look at this. This slide really lays out the whole mystery for us, right? In one column, you have these names that just sound epic. They sound like history and wonder. Sakse Huaman, Nurage, the Pinka Towers. Then, in the other column, you've got terms straight out of a chemistry textbook. Cliff chemistry, transition metal ions, critical metals. So where do we even start? I think we've got to start with the first set of clues, the big stuff.
All right, so let's start with what we can actually see, the really, really big stuff. We're talking about the sheer scale and, honestly, the genius of what our ancestors built, supposedly with just the simplest tools. It's kind of mind-blowing. Okay, first stop, Sacsayhuaman in Peru. And look, this isn't just some wall. This is a fortress made of these massive, interlocking stones. They're fitted together so perfectly, I mean, you literally can't slide a piece of paper between them. And we're not talking about little pebbles here. Some of these stones weigh over 100 tons. How did they do that?
Okay, let's see what else is in these notes. Ah, the Peak Towers. The notes describe them as structures that touch the sky. I mean, just think about that. It speaks to this incredible ambition and engineering skill to build so high with such precision and stability, long, long before we had modern cranes and computers.
And then there's Sardinia, which is a whole other level of mystery. The island is just dotted with thousands of these megalithic towers. They're called nuraghe. They're like these silent stone giants, and for centuries people have wondered not just how they were built, but why. What were they for? And the thing is, this wasn't just happening in one or two places. I love this slide because it shows this was a global thing. The source notes list sites from all over the planet. You've got the incredible walls of Great Zimbabwe, the Quaylap Fortress in Peru that's way up in the clouds, and you go all the way over to Dharawar Fort in Pakistan. This was a worldwide age of master builders. So this brings us to the big question, right? The one that's had historians and archaeologists scratching their heads for centuries. How in the world was any of this possible without modern tools? Maybe, just maybe, the answer isn't in how they designed the buildings, but in something much, much smaller. Okay, so let's hit pause on the giant rocks for a second and pivot. We're going to dive into that second column of clues from our notes, the sciencey stuff. We're leaving ancient engineering and heading straight into the world of chemistry. So these notes keep mentioning something called transition metal ions. What in the world are those? Well, the easiest way to think about them is like they're nature's crayons. Seriously, they're the elements that give minerals and rocks their amazing colors. You know, the deep red of iron rust or that cool green you see on old copper. They're basically a chemical signature left right on the stone. And then there's this word that keeps popping up, cliff chemistry. Now, that's not a word you hear every day, right? It seems to be a really specific field of study, all about, well, reading the chemical stories written right on the face of cliffs, rocks, and ancient stones. So how does that even work? How do you read a cliff? Well, it's kind of like being a detective. First, you just look. You observe the color of the stone or maybe a pigment from some ancient art. That color then points you to a specific transition metal ion. And once you know what that ion is, bam, you can start to understand the properties of the material it came from. Pretty cool, huh? But it's not just about color. The clues go way deeper than that. The notes also talk about analyzing stuff like critical metals and carbon-iron alloys, even how the crystals are arranged. Look, in simple terms, this stuff tells you about the material's guts. It's about its strength, how durable it is, and how well it stands up to thousands of years of wind and rain. Okay, so let's take a breath here. We've got two totally separate investigations going on, right? On one side, we've got these massive, ancient structures. On the other, these tiny, microscopic chemical clues. Now, for the fun part. Let's see how these two worlds collide. And this is it. This is the big question. It's cool that we have these two stacks of clues, but so what? What does the color of a rock really have to do with building a wall out of 100-ton blocks? How do these two separate notebooks finally become one single story? And then I found this, the smoking gun. Buried right in a list of titles from the source material is this one phrase, material science and neurologic technology. Boom. It directly connects the chemistry of materials to the technology of the Nuraghe builders back in Sardinia. This is the bridge between our two worlds. And just like that, everything starts to make sense. All those old questions start to get brand new answers. Like, how did they build things to last for millennia? Well, they weren't just picking up random rocks. They were basically ancient material scientists, analyzing the chemistry to pick the strongest, most durable stones. And what about that Debussy giraffe rock art we saw mentioned? By analyzing the transition metal ions in those paints, we can figure out exactly what minerals they used and maybe even track down the exact spot where they got them.
So here's the big takeaway. For so long, we've been looking for the secret in the design, in the shape of the stones or the layout of the walls. But the real genius, the hidden technology, was in their deep understanding of geology and chemistry. They knew exactly which materials to choose for the job.
Okay, so let's bring this all home. What does this amazing connection actually mean for how we see the past, and maybe what we're going to discover next?
You see, when you combine archaeology with material science, you're not just adding another tool to your kit. You are literally creating a brand new lens, a powerful new way to look at everything the ancient world accomplished. So let's just quickly run through what we've uncovered by connecting these dots. We now know that those ancient structures, they're packed with chemical secrets. We've learned that material science can actually decode the technological choices our ancestors made. We see that colors and composition aren't just pretty, they're a form of historical data, just as important as a piece of pottery. And maybe the biggest lesson of all is that to answer some of our oldest questions, we might need our newest sciences. And that's where I want to leave you. We found this incredible, profound connection just by piecing together some clues from history and chemistry. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other huge secrets are hiding right there in plain sight, just waiting for the right two disciplines to finally collide?